So I'm going to do a little bit of a video today about sailors, about the Holy See, about where that all comes from, and how we basically all worship the same thing and say that we don't, because actually all of our ancestors are one. And in ancient times, it didn't matter what your color, race, or creed was, we were all one. Until people decided to start and become, because of the energies and the belief systems here and off-planet deities, became very corrupt. That's just my take on it. So I'm going to talk about that. So, sailors in the ancient times, holy sailors. Some people called them storks, and some people, as Holy Ghost told me this past week, and I didn't get what it was about, albatross, which had a lot to do with Alcatraz, which I posted some stuff about on my Facebook because I was being led to. So, sailors, pirates of the sea, the ones who made mythical religious slaves out of people with their belief system. Some call them the phonecians, the giants, Some people call them the Finns, because some of us believe that the Phoenicians were basically Finns that came out of the North Pole and traveled the seas. And so basically we're all related to the same thing. So when a religion or a belief system comes up, which Christianity is about, and it does an ethnic cleanse in order to keep a family line, it is for off-planet purposes. Some people say it's not, because they think certain people own this planet. So therefore they own the cattle or the souls on it. And these are people I was involved in, people in my family, which I said before are in all kinds of these weird cults that are just regular human people that take on past dead entities in order to be something that they're not and never will be. So basically, they're a slave. Slavery begets slavery begets. The Holy See is what we call the Catholic Church. They have the fish on their head because it is about the Phoenicians. It's about all the religions combined. It is about world religion controlling the minds of human beings. And I'm not associating that with Christianity at all, because I believe I've said before that Christ and the church left by 70 AD, and that basically all the stuff we have left behind about them till 90 AD is mixed with lies. So I believe Jesus' church gathered at Petra and took the F off, because that's what Jesus said was going to happen, and soon isn't 2,000 years. So yes, can we still be dealing with this ages of 1,000 years of the rule of Shaitan and all this other stuff? Yes, but that's a frequency domain I mentioned in my last video. So sailors, or the storks, okay, the holy storks. These people had use of letters, that would have made them in those days the priests and the kings. Some people called them the Illyrians, the Lyrans, you can make sounds that all incorporate that, okay, who originally from whatever. But the Finns were originally people who survived the Ice Age by staying for 100,000 years under the ground. And this is why they were less melanined. It has nothing to do with righteous, holy, whatever, because you can increase your melanin. I've talked about that too, and how I decreased mine by taking the man's drug, sulfur, in order to heal from kidney disease, because white women are not taught about their bodies, and when their bodies start to change, how they need to take care of their bodies, because that information is lost, which is really sad. But this is what about being a slave here, or a slave of those who feel that they have the language and therefore the truth or the know or whatever, because it's changed over the hundreds of thousands of years to become a religion and not wisdom from God. So those people who were the priests, were the Illyrians, the Larians, the Pleiadians, the Nordics, who believe they own, here, the Finns, those peoples of the north who came up out of the inner earth, were not melanated because they spent hundreds of thousands of years in the dark. Now, if you know both your Vedic and other scriptures, you'll know that there were people who were born less melanined, and they weren't considered less. They were considered, oh, you're supposed to be a priest of the moon, so you're supposed to work only in the night. And then there were the people who were more melanated, who were the priests of the day, more seen, more in the open. It wasn't about black and white. It was about shades of human being and what they were naturally going to be good at, because that's what they were naturally called to be in their soul, which we've totally lost the belief of that, which is why the belief systems of black and white and division drive me nuts, because they're disgusting. Because like the Masons know, and the Illuminates know, that that's nothing, that anyone can become a slave who doesn't have certain knowledge and wisdom. And by those who have the knowledge and wisdom, the priests, you are considered a slave if you do not have this knowledge. Well, also because they have selfishness, and because they've demoted themselves, and they've mixed with off-race reptilian, which is just talking about the mind scape, never maturing, and mix their DNA with certain magical and demoted practices from the past in order to be good slave masters. And this is what they are and what they've made themselves. They have made reality into what it is. It's not about the Masons. It's not about the Illuminati. It's about those who are over them, the priests, who really know their shite. Okay? And they body hop. They've been around a long time, just like the Egyptians with their whole worshiping of the dead, which pyramids existed way before that. It's these religions and magic and the lack of energies in this earth in certain time periods, like I'm talking about the Ice Age and stuff, where people were divided and information was lost. And whether you want to believe that was because of Mu or Atlantis, or they're all the same thing. So back to the priests and the Illyrians and their belief systems. So they were the giants of their age. Whether you think of them as physical giants of the gods, because they were also that, we were also, like it's recorded that Adam and his kin were 13 feet tall. So are they evil because they're giants? I don't know. Like that just depends what side you're on. So these Illyrians were the ones who knew how to build, like the Phoenicians, and what they called the demons, what the Jews would have called the demons, because they had to use high magic through Solomon in order to make those people appear in this plane domain, to have dominion over them, which they were able to do because they got a ring from a higher order, the story of the ring. Take it as you see it, whether you see it as something that really happened in the past or whatever. But black magic corrupts. We'll just leave it at that. So they were the albatross, Albanians is what we call them, who were from Tibet to Scotland to you name it. They sailed all over the world. The Americas, they're Minoans, Mycenaeans, Akkadians, Greeks, Etruscans, Slavics, Balkans. They were all of us. Why? Because those who sailed the seas just came on land and took who and what they wanted and took off again. That was what they were, like Vikings, like Phoenicians, like the Finns. Not saying anybody's good or bad, or your religion's good or bad. I'm speaking history right now. So, like, follow the ancient line of history. This is what the Holy Ghost taught me. This is what my soul taught me. Why? Because it's been here a long time. Why? Just because when we are spirit, we are everything and we know everything. So there's no loss. There's just tuning in to what it says. So polygonal masonry is a I can't say this, excuse me, give me a moment. Pelagic which are these priests, which are these Illyrians, which are these Etruscans, the Greeks, which before the Greeks, they were the Pelasgic. They were the predecessors, the survivors of floods who lived in the North Pole and who could sail all over the world because they still remembered how to use the compass, how to use the square, and those things in Masonry were passed down. See the short video I did about Jesus's father and the Solomonic line. Okay, so the Greeks were kind of who took over the Pelasgic peoples. Pelasgic. I'm going to have a hard time. I'm going to call them the Pels because they've been called that. So we'll just shorten it. So the predecessors of the Greeks were these people, were these Finns, were these people, the Illyrians, the priests who were from the original 10 kingdoms of Atlantis before it fell. And they saved their knowledge and they only passed it on to who they wanted to pass it on to. Why? Because they considered themselves gods and they considered other people ignorant heathens, and people who came after the flood were considered ignorant heathens. Unless they stayed in family lines and used the family magic, which the Hebrews, the Hey-brews, the high brows, the high breds, lost because they had to get it back via their own Moses going into Egypt and learning all the magic of Egypt. So then they had the magic of the sun and the magic of the moon. The high brows, the Hebrews, worship the moon. People aren't going to like what I say. This is history. It ain't religion. Just buck up and write it. So the indigenous inhabitants of the Aegean Sea, the mythical inhabitants, we're told in history they are. They worshipped Dagon, Dodonian, Zeus, Hephaestus, Sabian, Cabian, and other divinities such that were like Shiva, who definitely, if you read the stories, has a lot to do with Achilles and Achilles' heel and the Greek gods. Also Poseidon, who is the slave god, the sailor of the sea, the gods of the sea. Also Ponos, Attica, Feronia. These are all Greek gods, goddesses, who are from the Minoan Greek and Etruscan, Slavic, Balkan beliefs, okay? So I'm telling you that they were the Nordics, that they were the Finns, that we all were related, and the only thing separating us is people who think they're priests of the soul, and they're actually just holders of an ancient tongue or an ancient language, and they have wisdom from the worship of the moon or the worship of the sun, which doesn't mean they're physically worshiping those things. It means that's their thing. Like if you stayed underground for 100,000 years, you'd lose your melanin, you'd have blue eyes within generations. Doesn't matter what color you are, you would lose that eventually. So would your children. So then therefore, you could come out and direct yourself no matter what time of day, well, mostly night. These sailors, pirates, sailed by night. So it gave them an advantage because they had all the knowledge and the wisdom of the stars, because they only came out from underground at night, right? And less predators then. And the world's covered in ice up north. So they come out at night and they read the stars. They go by the moon. That's their guide. That's their belief system. Not saying there's anything wrong with the sun and sun belief systems. It's just a different order of mage. So a different color, melanined people. They learned those things. They worked with the sun. Now, the predecessors knew not to just work with the moon and or the sun. They knew to work with the stars and learn from those things. Why? Because all is the ancestors. Because when ancestors become spirit, they have access to all wisdom and knowledge. Why? Because we're all stardust. Because we're all light traveling through, or particles and waves traveling through this thing called time. So we all have access to the truth. So the Greek gods, the Minoan gods, the Poseidon gods, the Shiva gods, these gods from all past ages are just all our ancestors who enslaved each other, people who didn't have the knowledge. Okay, so when Thoth said that he came, he said that when he came back to this place after the flood, that he went to the place where Egypt is now, and the people living there now would have been the original, when he landed, would have been, what we call the Egyptians, the darker Egyptians. Now, they mixed quite fine with the light people because they brought in light language, and they brought in language, and they brought in letters, and they brought in ancient magic, and they brought in, hieroglyphs, which are symbology, which is more sun-related. Moon is a little bit different. If you practice the two types of magic, you'll get what I'm saying. More is physical, more is hidden. More is daylight, more is night. More has to present itself in the day, more has to present itself in the night. So when we go back hundreds of thousands of years, or when we go back even pre-Younger Dryas, we go back to the 10 kingdoms, which are mentioned in the Hebrew, the highbrow, the high-bred Bibles. I don't agree that Noah is Enoch, because Noah's family brought him before his great-great-grandfather Enoch, which is in the scripts, and said, hey, this child has white skin and blue eyes. Why does he look like one of these people that worship in the night and live underground? We consider those giants. We consider them evil people. We consider them the reason why there is going to be judgment upon the earth and the floods come. Because we know the story of Atlantis, that they were causing these things, whether it was because they were using gas pits to blow up sea monsters, which is the story of Mu. I think I might be mixing my Atlantis and Mu stories, but hey, they're all the same because the earth breaks up, and Alaska's breaking up right now, mostly the ice parts. Africa's breaking up right now, literal land parts, and the ocean coming into the middle, which is going to change Africa, I totally believe, for the best. The whole world is changing for the better because the energy is rising here in this energetic thought form that we're holding on to. So these ancient sailor priests and peoples, whenever there's resets, they take their knowledge and their group of people that they believe hold knowledge and wisdom, and either they off them so only they have the knowledge and wisdom, which war is always about, or they keep them as slaves. Like, do you remember, if you don't know, look it up. In the Bible, the highbrow, the Hebrews, the hierarchy of those people were brought into slavery at one point in Babylon, and the ones who were saved was the ones who had knowledge of magic and ancient craft and connection to their God. And these people, these Hebrews, moon worshippers, they were vegetarians, mostly. They followed the Hebrew law, which didn't exclude eating of flesh. So if you know about that and look that up, there's no religions that exclude the eating of flesh completely. That is a lie of the New Age, which is predicted about by the Shivites, by the slave drivers, and also predicted in the Bible future. Okay, so it's just people that see in symbology like I do and predictate the future, because spirit isn't held back by time and place. And why do we have these foreseeings? So we can see what's coming down and either change that reality or prepare for it. Now, when the earth is run by ignorant slaves because of ignorant priests who have to have their wars, well, then eventually the whole of everything is dumbed down to the point where destruction is imminent. So either they're going to wipe out the people with the negative thinking, which they train to think negatively because they refuse to give them true teachings, and slaves multiply. That's what you use them for, and you let them, whether they were Roman, Greek, or who owned what before, when, where, how. And yes, the victors always write the history. And then there's people and tribes who preserve their own, which is what the Hebrews, what they believe they're hybrids. High, the Phoenicians, the higher. The word high means north. So these people descended from the north, the northern parts, and settled where they settled. Now, some people very adamantly can take all the belief systems that are, put on and about Israel, and they can put them all back to, say, Scotland or Ireland or the northern cities. Why? Because they were there first, and then we inhabited other places. Like New England has all the names of England mixed with the Micmac and Algonquin and Indian and these Pelasgic. Excuse me. I just want to add more syllables. I just want to add more syllables in there. Sybil is a whole new thing I have to talk about another time. So the priests of the Illyrians, the Lyrians, the ones who worship the music and the resonant frequency of the Shiva and the Shaitans and blah, blah, blah. We can go on and on and on. From Tibet to Scotland to wherever you think of, they have seeded their own kingdoms. And they seeded it through slavery, through stealing the best of the best, the most beautiful woman, the strongest men, the smartest people, because if not, you were offed. And so on goes the story until the energetic reality changes here, and we change that through bowing to the soul, the mind-body connection. Now, were many of my ancestors giants? All of our ancestors were giants. But the problem is that they were bred in a way with high magic, with people that shouldn't have interbred with those people who were survived the flood or who were reseeded, again, the seed, and made after a certain time, weren't supposed to mix. So the race makes giant, strong people that have ancient wisdom of these magic because your ancestors are in your DNA. It's not about evil and good, but they are demoted energies, confused energies, and tend to use it for evil. And the wisdom coming from the Jains and the Naga and the tree Buddhas, the tree energies, which is in the Bible, the serpent in the tree, on the tree, Naga. That energy, those thought forms from the fourth dimension, magic, we're not supposed to mix with our children because it created giants that were not all wise people, that were dumbed down and hard to control. They were wild men. And the story of the Anunnaki talks about the wild men. So, yeah, star people exist. They're just other races. Other races, like in the Shiva's time in India, they knew how to fly. Ancients, Thoth, knew how to fly. Why did he have the head of an ibis, an albatross, or some people might say a stork? Because he was of the Holy See. He was a priest, an Illyrian. Some say that they were of this, star seed and that star seed. No, they were a star seed of, in other words, they had ancient magic. And this is why these people came back to Egypt, built there, taught the people that were there, that they called them, Thoth called them that they were wild men, that they didn't have any teaching or learning, and they were just, out there, crazy warring thugs, wild men. And also we have that story in the Anunnaki, that they made friends with and controlled and taught the wild men language, letter, form, formation. Letters teach us form and formation. They bring symbology into a type of language that we can comprehend and understand. But for some reason, within the star seeds, within the controllers of off-planet controllers, they don't want new seeds and new people learning stuff from the ancient past. We always teach them anyways. And is that evil? Is that demonic? Well, I'll tell you what happens when people learn too much. And the Romans believe this too. When you teach slaves anything, you got offed. Because if you taught the slaves learned how to take over. Okay, same with the Greek. What happened with the Greek was too many people became learned. They didn't do anything and they were easy to conquer. Because they had all this wisdom, but if you study ancient Greek language, it literally drives you mad, which is what the high court said to the Apostle Paul, much learning has made you mad. You're like, you studied all these languages, you know, the Greek, the Phoenician, the Hebrew, and you're insane. And they knew that too much study of lingua or language and the speech and the letters and the symbologies behind that, which the Finns taught, which are also come from the language of the trees. Okay, the great trees and the spirits that were in those trees, the Naga, that were not supposed to teach us. It's all connected. No matter how much history you study, it's not us and them and these and those. It's slaves and it's people who have wisdom. They don't care what your color, race, creed, actuality is. It's just you're stupid and they're brilliant because they have something you don't have. So, you know, I can go on and on and on about this, but the Finn language, like the sign for Sagittarius, which is Tiwaz, is it? I think so. That symbol alone has so much energy that it can teach you so much about so many other things, which is why people learning runes nowadays are open to a whole world of things they didn't know, because symbology packs everything into a few tiny twigs that, you know, like we say that Odin hung upside down on the tree, the world tree, until he learned from it. He made himself a sacrifice, and that spirit came into him and taught him. And this is what people do when they practice these ancient rituals, where they step out of the way through ritual and some other deity or naga or serpent being, anything from the fourth dimension, just an energy, just a spirit, comes in and teaches. Not saying it's right or wrong, because I've experienced it as a Christian, which they have their own beliefs, their own interdimensional. I'm not going to get into that whole thing because it's about power and authority. It's also about race and racism, basically the survival of the underdog. And they turn that into race wars. And as I said, it doesn't matter any of this if it's Shiva and Satan, because the vibration of the whole earth is changing, and we're all going to either survive and thrive and change and become this new world order within, above, below, within, without. It's not the forcing of the outside peoples. Oh, like we're going to leave all the women on earth. Now the Illuminati's saying that, and leave them here behind to fight, and the men are going to take off to Mars. We don't need the women, and women are from Venus, blah, blah, men from Mars. They're literally making an off-world slave planet of Mars as we speak. It's been being done for a long time. And if you wonder about that, go back and try to figure out why the Russians were so obsessed with Venus and landing on Venus, and everything was Venus, and Mars was left to other people, and the moon was left to other people. So yeah, there are high magic, and there are thought forms, and there are energy and ancestors anywhere. And the best place to get that is from within the self. That's where I harnessed all my energy from, and all my knowing from was communing with the ancestors, with the all, going within myself. And yes, I did use magical cuttings and plants, which is what makes one a giant in the mind if it's used correctly, or it makes you a bad giant in the mind if used incorrectly, because we're not meant to hold all the wisdom of the universe, and it will crack us and break us down if we don't have self-control and we're too full of our shite. We think we're the only God, and we become this solipsist, crazy figure that, oh, everyone else is a slave. Yes, normal people sometimes make me want to vomit in my own mouth, but that's because their ignorance is literally killing themselves and the rest of us who want to stay sane and healthy, literally. And why is that? Because the holy overseers made it that way. So when are the sailors, the Illuminati, the pirates, when are they good and when are they bad? It depends what they're serving and who they're serving and whose side they're on. You know, if they're into solipsism, like my ex, they're going to be nuts. If they're like my Bohemian Grove family, they're going to be nuts because they're nuts. And they may be all powerful in the mind, but they have no grace. It's not a wisdom that holds grace, that holds light for everyone, that holds truth for everyone. No, it's them and their power, and they need to keep the power because they're children of the gods. No, they took in God's energy from the fourth dimension, which are dead spirits, which anyone can do, which are egregore, which are thought forms that are folding now to make way for other people to exist and other wisdom to exist, which is of a higher frequency than what these Bohemian Groves and Illuminatis and pirates and skull and crossbones of the past want to teach us. And that's all I can say. We're all related. Doesn't matter, red and yellow, black and white. Red, by the way, is ochre, which is great for your skin, whether it's yellow, brown, or red. If you're light, you can put that on yourself while the sun changes out here. And that's why blonde people with dark skins are all over these frescoes all over the world, because the blonde-haired, blue-eyed people had to wear sunglasses and had to cover themselves in ochre so they wouldn't burn. And the melanin people with the dark hair and dark eyes didn't have to wear that shite. So simple. It's so simple, but we make it into something so not simple with our hate and our stupidity and my people are better than your people because they're darker, because they're lighter. Well, at all one time, we all loved each other and we were all one. And that's what the New World Order is going to be. Not a world. It's going to be this earth. It's going to be those people who know that, who love because of love, because they love their own soul and therefore can judge from the highest throne of all in the universe, for the best of everyone. And some people don't want to change and they won't. And so they'll go wherever the slaves go that want to be slaves. But there's no way a soul can actually ever be a slave, no matter who is enslaved. So at the end of the day, with all the history of the Holy See, bow to your soul, because that's the Holy See. Thank you.